Hey everyone, Hannah here. So I'm making this video today in order to talk about your final paper. So the first thing I want to address is the trading grade, which in my mind served a purpose. And I think in theory it is still a good idea. But in practice has not worked out well. And so I'm going to change some things. I'll start by, I'll start by saying that the trading grade was meant to be a way for all students in the class to receive feedback on their final paper. The idea being, if you receive feedback on your final paper before it's actually due, then you'll get a better score for your final paper, which means you'll do better in the class overall when I do your final grades. And probably if it weren't for COVID and the stress of COVID and the stress of everyone having to take all of their classes online, that probably would have worked out well. However, there's just too much happening this semester. Things are really, really stressful, and I can't continue implementing the trading grade with seeing how everyone is struggling with that part of the final paper. I think it's causing more distress, and it was supposed to alleviate stress. And so if it's not doing that, then it no longer serves a purpose. With that being said, if you have already traded and graded with a partner, I will take that into consideration when I grade. This does not mean you'll get points deducted if you do not do a trading grade. What it means is, if you traded and you did the trading grade with someone else in this class, I will take into consideration the original draft you started with and where your draft is at the end of the semester. And so rather than just grading your final paper in sort of a bubble, I'll take into consideration the revisions you've made and the effort you've put into making those revisions and working with someone else in the class. If you have not done the trading grade and that's stressing you out, just stop, don't worry about it, and it will not negatively impact your final paper grade. So here are some options for you. You can just share your final paper with me or Brianna before it's due, and we'll provide feedback to you, and you can still go through that revision process as a way to work on your writing and get the final grade you need for your final paper and for this class. So that's one option. You still get that revision process. You're still working on your writing, and that was always the purpose of the trading grade. And then the other option is, if you're really stressed out about COVID and about all your classes being online and you just cannot even fathom the revision process. I think that's a reality for some students. And that's okay. I've been there as an undergrad. I know what that feels like, to feel like, you just want to submit your final paper and be done, right? So you can also do that. It's likely that you might not score quite as high if you don't go through the revision process, but let's say you figure out your final class grade for SOC 333 before you submit your final paper, and you have an A going into the final paper, and you'll maintain that A even if you don't get an A on the final paper. Maybe you don't need to do the revisions. Maybe you are okay with just submitting whatever you have done, just for the sake of being completely finished with this class. I know what that feels like, and I'm totally okay with that. So those are your options. No one, I can't stress this enough, no one will be penalized if they do not do a trading grade. You will not be penalized if you make zero revisions. And if you do the trading grade or you do revisions with me or Brianna, you'll be compensated as far as your final paper grade, meaning I'll take your revision process into consideration, looking at where you started and where you came, and taking that into consideration when I grade your final paper based on the rubric. All right, so that's all fine and dandy, right? But what if you haven't started your paper because you're so overwhelmed and you don't know what the heck is going on? Well, that's okay. I've been there too. And so, couple things. One, as I mentioned in my email, if you totally dropped the ball on the discussion leader project, I gave an alternative option. That alternative option was to summarize all of the weekly topics we've covered so far this semester, which basically meant that the students doing this alternative assignment, they had to summarize more topics than what everyone else did for the discussion leader project in a more synthesized way, in a shorter amount of space. And depending on what you like doing, if you're a more wordy person, that was probably more of a challenge. If you like to be concise, then perhaps it wasn't as challenging. But regardless, it was the same amount of work required of all students for the discussion leader project. And it also serves a purpose, right? Because if you're struggling with starting your final paper for this class, you have no idea where to begin. You don't know what topic to write your final paper on. You can actually read these summaries that your classmates are doing, and that will hopefully help you come up with a topic for your final paper. So I have permission to share this document that a student is working on. So this is your classmate Amelia. Love that name. That's my older sister's name. So Amelia did the alternative discussion leader project, and the first thing she did was she summarized all the weeks in a couple paragraphs. And so what I've been doing is I've actually been pairing up two students so that they split the weeks in half, and then they write a little bit more. So rather than doing like one paragraph per week and doing all the weeks, they're doing 2 to 3 paragraphs for each week that they did. So you can see Amelia was tasked with the first half of the semester, and her partner was tasked with the weeks later on in the semester. And you can see that, Amelia has summarized all of the weekly material and the topics, and then has a reference page covering, these are the readings and the videos that relate to the weeks that I covered. So if you're totally at a loss for what to write about for your Survey of Criminology final paper, just start reading over these alternative discussion leader projects. Amelia is the first one who has shared anything with me, but as those projects come in, I'll share them with the entire class. It doesn't take very long to read some of these summaries that Amelia has so succinctly come up with, right? Like, these are one page, if that. You might even just look at the topic and be like, oh yeah, okay, I didn't really like the intro and the history of prisons. That was boring to me. I'm not even going to read that. I'm not big into theory, so I'm not even going to bother looking at the intersectionality stuff. But I really loved looking at prisons and the prison industrial complex. So I'm going to focus on week 4 and week 3 summaries. And once I read those 2 weekly summaries that Amelia did, that should give me a better idea of what my topic is going to be for my final paper. And remember, you have free reign to cover any topic we've covered this semester in your final paper. All right. So I hope that this alternative discussion leader assignment that some folks are doing will help students who are struggling with final paper topics. And that's the purpose of that alternative option. All right, but what does your final paper look like? right? So there's a rubric, but it's kind of loosey-goosey to a certain extent. So what should you be doing? Well, another classmate of yours, Kiani, did a full draft of their final paper and asked for feedback from me. And I was like, dang, this is like a really awesome paper. Like, this is what my expectations are for this assignment, like best case scenario. So you can already see that the paper is formatted using APA because we have the running header, we have the cover page. Even just looking at the structure of this paper, you can see that there are nice paragraph structures, no run-on paragraphs, as I like to call them, which is where there's just no paragraphs. And then you can see that the reference page is formatted properly with the indentation and all of that good stuff. And you can see that the student has used an appropriate number of resources. Some of these resources are ones that I assigned, like a video I made, like Captive Genders, the reading by Jennifer Dara, who's a professor here at UH. But there's also some outside references, and if you look at the rubric for this assignment, you'll see that I do ask for students to use readings that I assigned as well as outside sources, and you can see this student has done that. And so the student took a topic from this class, criminalizing Native Hawaiians in their homeland, but you can see that, and they're working with intersectionality theory and colonialization and all that stuff that we covered, but they very much made it their own, right? So we didn't necessarily drill down into Native Hawaiian land rights and Mauna Kea and stuff like that. I sort of did an overview of that topic. And so this student is interested in that topic, and that's what they chose to write their final paper on. And so you can see that, that they took a topic we covered and they drilled down and got more in depth, and that's perfectly fine. And I think that, that's my hope, that like everyone in the class can do that, right? Take a topic that we covered and then go into more detail about that topic because you're interested in it. And so that's my expectation for this assignment. Remember, if you're on La Lima and you go to the left-hand side and you go to resources and you go to this folder under the resources tab called syllabus, schedule, and rubrics, the final paper rubric is right here. If you click on that link, it will download. And this is what you'll get graded on. So the paper should be 4 to 5 pages in length. You should have 3 in-text citations that were from our class. And so you saw that the student paper that I used as an example, there were at least 3 in-text citations from class material, including the Stanley textbook Captive Genders. And then the student also had at least 2 additional outside sources. And you can see that I'm grading on a holistic understanding of the topic, the appropriate use of criminological theory, including intersectionality, which that student did. They used intersectionality. I'm looking for like appropriate grammar, organizational structure, appropriate APA or ASA formatting. I prefer APA, that's what I use, but I provide resources for both options. And if you go to the OWL Purdue website, there's a plethora of information about both formatting styles. And then includes at least 2 additional outside sources that are well researched. So that's something that you should be doing on your own time, where you find resources on your topic that we didn't use for our class. So resources that I did not assign. And then you can see how you're going to be graded. Okay, so that's the rubric. And you can see I provide some additional topic suggestions, use street gangs, prison industrial complex, power and crime. There's just anything that we talked about this semester in Survey of Criminology SOC 333 you can use. And so I hope that this video helps to provide clarity. I just want everyone to turn in a final paper, turn in a discussion leader project, and get as much points for the semester as possible at this point. And so that's my MO, so to speak. I want everyone to finish the semester as strong as possible, but I also acknowledge that with COVID and everyone's classes moving online, there's just a lot of external stressors that neither students nor myself have control over. And so I don't want additional barriers to exist. Like, I don't want to self-impose additional barriers on my students. And I think at this point, doing the trade-in grade for students who haven't started that process is an unnecessary additional barrier. So I hope this video helps. As always, feel free to email me at hannahli@hawaii.edu if you have any questions. And you can also email Brianna if you need to. Bye, everyone.